Hello everybody. Okay, are we ready for our next segment here? Doug Merrill, are you ready? Tom Messner, you're ready? Okay. All right, we can begin then. All right, everybody. First, thank you to UVM for bringing us all together. Thanks to our audience for devoting some time and attention to this. And thanks to our panelists who are each engaged in advancing investment, entrepreneurship, and creativity for the benefit of our community. So this next segment is called Innovation and Investment, Benefits and Trade-Offs. And I got to say, when I was asked to moderate this panel, it actually took me a few cycles to figure out what this discussion was supposed to be about. At first, I was like, are we talking about the trade-offs between innovation and investment? That didn't seem quite right, because to me, innovation requires investment. Or are we talking about the trade-offs that we necessarily have to make when we are investing in innovation to create the societal benefits associated with an innovation-driven economy, some of which you just heard about from Dominic. So I think it's more the latter than the former, but I'd like to ask our panelists, when you joined this panel, with its fairly broad and somewhat nebulous title, what did you think we were going to talk about? Rob Lair.
It's funny, I stumbled a little bit on it too, right? What is it really all about? But most of the downside, I don't know. It's hard for me to find the downside, quite frankly, a little bit, right? The downside is that we invest in companies and sometimes they fail, right? The downside is that we invest in the Burlington, Vermont, and larger Vermont economy, and sometimes we fail. Some of the downsides, we don't have enough housing. When we succeed in investing in companies, which is our mandate, growing jobs, growing the Vermont economy, the downside can be we don't have enough places to house the workers, and we don't have enough childcare. So that's kind of on the negative side. I don't know, 50 people have come to Vermont in their various 22 portfolio companies and said, I can't live here because I can't find a place to live. And they go back, they go away. So that's the downside that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
The upside is I get out of bed every single morning, like everybody here in the venture world, and we get to vision the future, right? It's the most exciting thing that I can possibly imagine doing with my life. That's the upside. And hopefully, right, all of us together are building a visionary Vermont that kind of shines like a beacon rather than kind of becomes tired, worn out, and a little bit irrelevant, right? We switch that around, and all of a sudden Vermont is like out there kind of projecting to the rest of the country. We are an innovation technology leader, especially in green tech and all the other good things that are our Vermont brand.
Yeah, great, awesome. Sam, what did you think we were going to talk about, or what do you want to talk about?
I had no idea, but I thought I could sit on a couch with John Antonucci and chit chat. So right. I figured it would be a good time, no matter what. For me, I think a lot of the sort of like macro themes are the same here, right? It's childcare, it's housing, it's getting and retaining talent. For me, what I'm most interested in is the people and the individuals that are actually starting and growing businesses here in Vermont or aspire to do that. So for me, I hope to talk about a few like really tactical things that those folks can take away today and like actually take those actions to help facilitate the communication, especially between entrepreneurs and investors, because I think that is one of the biggest hurdles is a lot of entrepreneurs just don't know how to interact with investors. And so, one thing we say at VCET is come as you are with what you have. And you can see the shoulders of the entrepreneur just lower a little bit, right? They just get a little bit more like, whew, okay, I can do that, right? So for me, it's that, right? It's supporting these people on an individual basis to make sure that they can do the thing they have to do, and all of those little things, all of that sort of empathy and trust building with entrepreneurs leads to the bigger stuff.
Right. Great. Awesome. Jay, what were you thinking we got you involved in here?
Good morning. I wasn't sure. The description says we're going to talk about slow money and patient capital, and I have no idea what those things mean. In fact, I didn't Google it because I thought if someone asked me...
We're actually not going to really talk about those things.
I didn't Google it. I thought if somebody asked me, I would just turn to Rob and he'll tell me what it means. I thought of, I guess, three things. First, I thought of the trade-offs often associated with the culture industry is that we can invest in arts and culture often until we invest in other areas of infrastructure. And so I thought I was going to have to make an argument for why that was a false choice. Hopefully I've been doing that for both days, and hopefully you understand that. But then I thought, well, maybe it's about the investments that the arts are making in our culture. So the Flynn actually works with 86% of Vermont schools to provide a whole series of arts education programs. We are all across the state. We're not just in Chittenden County. We have a high school program for high school students where they're writing music around social justice. It's called Sound Check, and it's like kids rocking out as they write music about topics they care about. And the Flynn hosts that program in central Vermont so that more kids around the state can participate. We don't do it at the Flynn because it's not geographically as useful to provide more diversity of participation. So that's one of the things I thought we would talk about, or why I thought, oh, well, I could talk about that because we're investing in our future. We're investing in our youth. We're trying to make better humans, which is going to help everyone. But then I thought, well, maybe what I'll talk about is when we talk about this investments, one of the things that Dominic talked about is we become a knowledge town, what that means. Then I thought, well, then I could apply my arts hat, which is to say, well, for whom? Who are we trying to provide jobs and housing for, and who's included in that journey, and whose voice is really participating, who's benefiting from this growth in capital or this growth in knowledge communities. And that's one thing I always think about a lot. So those are the things I hope to talk about.
Okay, great, awesome. Well, let's make sure we get to all that. John, what did you think we got you involved in?
I'm hoping that we can discuss how we can create more or inspire more Skylar Bagdons.
Yay, Skylar.
And I'm hoping
CEO of Verde Technologies.
We're supposed to tell him. He's going to be here later, along with a bunch of other people who are creating really innovative, inspiring things. And this institution is critical for this state. And it's very important to the work we all do. And so that's what I'm most interested in talking about, is how we can do that better.
Okay, great. So let's spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about those topics, and then we'll save maybe about 10 minutes for some audience Q&A to this great panel. So
Hey, TJ, can I interrupt for just a second? I know already, I'm the worst. If you are interested in the original topic of slow money, patient capital, Janice St. Ange of the Flexible Capital Fund would be a great person to talk to.
There you go. This panel, we all operate kind of at the intersection of innovation, investment, and entrepreneurship and or creativity and trying to do something beneficial for our community. Whether that circulates quickly or slowly, we're all taking risks. We're all engaged in the business of taking risks and making investment in some form for these beneficial outcomes. So why do you do it? Sounds kind of hard. Sam, why do you do it? What are you looking? What kind of outcome are you trying to create with that?
I do it to help entrepreneurs find clarity and to remove barriers, because often it's as simple as giving them permission, right? So someone comes to me and they have this crazy idea and they don't know if they should quit their job and they've been wanting to do it forever. And all I have to say is like, I think you should do it. They walk out of the room, they're like, yes, all right, I can do it. I'm like, well, I literally said one thing. That's all they needed to hear.
Just a little affirmation.
And off they go, yeah. And so, for me, I think it's those interactions where, I spend an hour of my time talking to someone and basically just listening to to what they want to do and why they want to do it, and how they're going to do it, and kind of helping them solve some of those pretty minor barriers to start, whether it's here's some non-dilutive funding options. This person at UVM is actually researching this. Have you connected with them? Let me make the introduction. It's those little things that lead to the next, right? Skylar came to VCET, when he was a freshman with a pretty silly idea. We've all agreed. He's moved on to a bigger idea. But it was believing in him in those early days. Say, listen, you have what it takes. It's probably not this idea, but it's going to be the next one. So for me, it's those little conversations where afterwards they say, this is exactly what I needed. That's why I keep doing it. And I think all of us here, you can't do this work without being an optimist, and that's what I am.
Right. Love it. John, why do you do it? Why do you devote your life to taking risk kind of for the benefit of others?
So I'm a product of UVM. I graduated from the economics and sociology department, and I had outstanding professors. And
it's a little bit of a
like,
tepid kind of applause there, folks.
And the number one thing I left here understanding was what are some of the important components of a great community. And I also had a background of growing up in an economically depressed town and having the good fortune to have parents who are entrepreneurs, and they really took care of their community through the businesses they ran. But mostly the academics that I was exposed to helped me understand that economic security, dignity, and a sense of opportunity are very, very important. And it leads to all kinds of other things, great public policy, the arts, obviously economics. But if you have those things, you can do a lot. And it doesn't matter how much money or resources or the quality of the environment if you don't have those core things. And what I learned over the years was that businesses are a fundamental piece of that. And the jobs that they provide, the services that they provide, and the way that those businesses operate has a huge impact on the community. And so that's why I do the work I do, trying to help people start businesses that can take care of their communities.
Great. Jay.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is there's no plan B. That's important. A lot of people, excuse me. A lot of people ask about how do you have a career in the arts. It's actually, my parents tried to do everything they could to dissuade me. Like, oh, you're never going to find a job. And I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And there wasn't a plan B. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I come from a long line of rabbis. And I think community organizing is sort of in my DNA. And I care about that. And third, I just think I look around and we've been through a lot. There's been a lot of trauma. There's been a lot of collective confusion and change. And I think, I've got to step in. What can we do? How can we get people together to have a conversation? And how can we collectively find healing? And I like to think about what the arts do is we rewrite the cultural memory of place. When you experience something, like, I don't know if you were at the Jazz Festival at the Waterfront, but when you're dancing with your family, with your friends, and your whole community, and you're having a drink, and you're just feeling the breeze, that changes, like, in your bones, how you feel about where you are and who you are and what's possible. And I think that's so fundamental, and that's why I do it, because that opportunity for people to just feel better about themselves seems so crucial. And it seems to be, for me, the first step before a lot of this other work will happen, which is why I think I'm on this couch central with these really amazing people who are investing in our community in a variety of ways. So I do that because I believe so deeply in the power of art to ignite change.
Incredible. I love it. And Rob, Hula, one of the larger private investments in our local community that we've seen recently, truly impressive, and the fund at Hula, incredible work you guys are doing, not without its own risk. Why do you do it?
I think it's mostly about for us and myself, right? Being around people who can vision and dream things out. It's about helping people really fulfill their dreams. Probably every single person in this room has some kind of vision for something that they'd like to do. Maybe it's not your current job or something else, right? Starting with the lemonade stand. My father was a longshoreman. He started selling golf clubs out of the back of his car. and then became the largest exporter in the world after about 6 years, right? Just had a vision. He hardly educated, working as a longshoreman. So if you come to us with a dream and a vision, right, you have our attention, right? And then it's how do we help you, right? How do we help you do that? It's really social work with some money attached to it. You know what I mean? And it's a helping profession. It's unlocking human potentiality. That's really what, you know, we're most obsessed about. That's why we take the risk, because the risk is real. It's not easy. It's tough. So
great. So let's kind of twist on that a little bit. So you're trying to create these outcomes, kind of unlocking this potential, helping people realize their dreams, their ambitions, kind of achieve their personal potential. John, how do you measure your performance in this? How do you know if you're on track or off track? Like anything, in order to do better, you kind of got to understand how you're doing today. So how do you know when it's working? Or even what success looks like?
So anyone who's talked to me maybe like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago is going to find this highly hypocritical or contradictory, but I used to think
it's called evolution, I think.
I've evolved, which I think is important because originally, obviously, everyone jumps at the easy stuff like jobs and revenue and tax base and the number of investors or like easy to quantify metrics. And I thought, well, those don't tell the whole story. They don't tell the story of interconnectedness, who's doing what. And so we try to think about other ways in which we can approach the problem. And Dan Harvey's in this room somewhere, and he and I spent a lot of time going all over the country trying to find models to evaluate the strength of our ecosystem and tell whether or not we were doing anything, what we were doing was working. And we found a lot of models, but they were all having the same problem we were. And the evolution that I had recently was that the thing that we're all trying to get at, everyone has said it here, you all work on it on a daily basis, I'm sure, is this sense of opportunity or the ability to dream and then the courage and the belief that you can execute on that dream. And if we think about that as the goal and measuring outcomes that indicate whether or not that is getting better or improving, then some of those easy to measure things like the number of startups, the number of patents, the numbers of dollars of research funding, those actually are a great metric in understanding how this community is thinking about reaching for the sky or doing things that are going to change the world. And I think that that's sort of an evolution that I've had, and I think it's an important one to continue to be focused on.
Great, helpful lens. Sam, how do you measure your performance? Or VCET's performance?
Yeah, so
measure your impact.
I got my numbers guy, Dave Bradbury, who he can remember any number.
You better get these numbers right.
It's infuriating because I don't remember any numbers ever, but I think it's kind of a metaphor for how we measure success, right? Because Dave will mention that our portfolio companies have over $200 million in payroll, right? So that's okay. We are creating high-paying jobs in Vermont, which is one of our main goals. For me, it's so qualitative. I love a good anecdote, right? So, and it's not always the money put into it, right? Because I actually spend more time discouraging entrepreneurs from taking venture than I do writing checks, because often it's not right. And I'm happy to talk to anyone here about that and what that looks like. But it's, after a female founders event that I host, a woman emailing me and saying, I saw myself in these speakers, and I just wanted to let you know that after coming to the event in January, I actually started my company in March. And I needed that kick in the ass. And I'm like, yes, this is working. This is why we're doing it. And I think, from an ecosystem perspective, there's a number of things. I've been with VCET for 7 years, and I cannot tell you how much the ecosystem has changed in those 7 years. And I think one of the indicators of a truly healthy ecosystem is that my portfolio overlaps but is not the same as Rob's and as John's. So we do have mutual, and of course yours.
Yeah,
sorry, TJ.
Right.
You're not on the couch, so. So I think that right there is such an indicator of a healthy ecosystem, that we see these companies where, it's a hell yes from all of us, and there's some that, Dave and I see that are, not the right fit for John or for Rob, and to me that's massive. And then, just connecting it back to UVM, earlier this week, they're sitting right over there, 3 ARC students came to me and said, hey, can we talk to you about our customer discovery process and our market validation? And I could have cried, seriously, and I think Corinne probably will too. 7 years ago, I don't think a UVM student would have done that or known what market
Certainly
validation.
not use those words.
Right, exactly. Right? And they were on the right track. I told them, you guys are killing it. I had a few suggestions, but they know what that is and they're doing it correctly. And that, to me, that's success.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. And we're doing this here in Vermont, by and large. Very small state, modest economy, pretty rural nature, lack of population density, kind of unique socioeconomic and political dynamics. Given all that and what we're trying to do here, do you find that these are factors that make it harder or easier to get to the outcomes you want? Rob?
So a little bit of numbers. We're small. We did $1.17 billion of money coming into Vermont companies between March 2020 and March 2022. So think about that, $1.17 billion. Yeah, a lot of that was beta, but a lot of it was not beta, too. We're on track to do about $600 million in 2023. So we're small, but we're growing. That's a 500% increase, that 2020 to 2022, 540% increase from the previous 2-year period. We were the fastest growing, right, according to PitchBook, during that period of any state in the country, right? So we're small, but we're mighty.
Potent.
Yeah, it is harder, though, to do it here. You have to have a concentrated portfolio, in our view, that takes the 5-6 top companies and really pushes on them, right? Because we don't have the deal flow of other areas. But the advantage is we know every single founder. Kyle was a neighbor. Kyle Clark was a neighbor. We raised our kids together, right? When it came time to write those checks, I've known Kyle for 14 years, right? And that's the upside, TJ.
Yeah, great. Jay, what about you? I mean, do you find the very nature of Vermont makes it either easier or harder to get to the outcomes that you're working towards?
I think the word you just used is really interesting, the very nature of Vermont. I'm interested in this space because I came here from a big city, where often my job was to get the person you were riding the subway with to have a conversation with you. Like, how do you understand that the person you're riding the subway with is human and having the same experiences? And here, scale is so different. I might be thinking, you might not live next door to someone that you can see. Maybe there's enough land between you two that dialogue is even harder to have. What's relationship of density and relationship? But that's interesting, and I think the public space here, Vermonters care about their public space deeply. They're deeply invested in understanding who has the right to be in public space, what do we do with public space, who owns it, who builds on it, who greenifies it, who farms on it, all the things. That means that the civic dialogue is rich and ripe and fertile. And one of the things I wanted to do here was think, how do we explore that? I am the only North American on a network of, a European network that produces art in public space. It's called In Situ. It's funded by the European Commission. And the Europeans have been funding art in public space in an extraordinary way for decades and really invested in that. And it shows when you visit their cities and you participate in their cultural experiences. And we have that opportunity in this country. The government has by and large ceded its responsibility to fund the arts in our community or educate children in the arts. And so through private philanthropy and organizations like the Flynn, we're sort of taking on that role. And I've been thinking more and more about how the Flynn wants to decentralize the architecture of the building and re-centralize people. And when you start doing that, you start thinking about how the public space is the place where we're going to have these experiences. We're going to have it see each other. And Vermont cares about that. So actually, the opportunity for the Flynn to create a sort of national center for art in public space that's really informed by what other countries are doing, that's hence my relationship to this network and why that's valuable, feels really potential. And here's that I'm sitting on a couch with some of the leading venture capitalists in the state. I couldn't have done that where I used to live. And to be able to be connected and to think there are other people who are also interested in investing in our community, in our populations, in our diversity, in lifting up these voices, and will support the Flynn's ability to do that, that's a great place to be. I'm very grateful, and I think it will hopefully support the artistic practices of communities across the state, not just here in Burlington.
I love it. So given that we're all kind of focused on trying to enable or inspire or motivate people to go out and do something new, something creative, that seems to be something that like everybody could get behind, right? But are there forces that you find yourself having to work against, or issues that you're trying to overcome that, you know, kind of require some unique momentum or kind of new approaches? John.
It might relate to your previous question, which is, you know, one of the things about our nature here is the sort of Yankee spirit, which is, you know, don't ask for anything more than you need, and be grateful for what you have, and make it work and make do. Those are all great in terms of like ways to approach the world and being grateful, but it doesn't necessarily inspire people to do great things. And we were on a call before the panel, and Jay said something that really struck me, which was, you know, in the arts, you know, a big, huge part of it, sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, but is encouraging people to take risks and go out and try something, sometimes in front of a crowd, but sometimes it's just to put something new in the world. And I think about that a lot because, you know, Rob mentioned maybe a lack of deal flow here, but, you know, Vermonters are no less innovative. They're no less smart. They're no less capable of doing things, but also of dreaming of things that can be done. And so what is it that separates Vermont, or, you know, a concentration of population in Vermont from doing great things? And it comes back to the way in which we communicate the opportunity. And so I oftentimes hear things like, well, Vermont's punching above its weight, or for a small state, you know, we're doing relatively good. For me, that's not what it's about. You know, if you, the analogy I use to describe it is athletics, because beyond working with startup founders, I was a teacher for 10 years, so I worked with students, and I've coached for 20 years. And so I've seen students and athletes do incredible things when they were given the attention that made them feel like they could do great things. And so you could take the same team, if you give them crappy uniforms, crappy equipment, ask them to play on a crappy field, a crappy coach, and then you say, okay, let's go out and compete against the best teams in the league or you know, the country or the world, you can't expect unrealistic results. Same with students. When we make investment decisions, we are necessarily communicating something to our community. And it's not just investment of money. It could be our investment of time. It can be the investment of how we invest our time. You can be there, or you can be really present and really give a shit. You know, Sam sitting down with students who may or may not have an enterprise in the future that she can fund because she cares, says something. And so I guess the thing that I think about a lot is when we're going to think about investing or doing something, we often get bogged down in thinking, well, is this, you know, could we make do with it the way it is? Or do you really need that? Or maybe isn't somebody else already doing this and won't this duplicate efforts? I want us to think, okay, these are people who want to do something great. What do they need to do it? Okay, whatever they say they need, let's do it to the absolute best we can do it. Okay, Hula is a great example. This space is a great example. So let's do more things like that communicate to the people in this state that we believe that they can do great things, and I think we'll have better outcomes.
Great. Inspiring. So coming to the topic at hand, what do we think are the actual benefits of greater degrees of innovation and entrepreneurship here in our community? Rob?
Saving lives, curing AFib. 99% of people with AFib don't have a cure. Core map is doing that. I think it's drilling down into the benefits of every specific vertical in every specific company. We have to generate returns, and our second mandate is that we have to invest in the best world-changing technologies that we can possibly find, right? The benefits are world-changing. From tiny little Vermont, we're exporting a focus on electric aviation. From all over the world, we're doing it from Vermont, right? Core map literally is, changing the way that millions and millions of people are going to be living their lives from tiny little UVM medical center, right? So it's the technologies themselves. And I don't see why we've done it before as Vermonters. We've been the beacon, right, for social change, politics, all this kind of stuff. Why can't we be the same for innovative technologies when the first thing that comes to your mind for Vermont, oh yeah, that's incredible innovation going on in Vermont. Oh, Vermont's a tech hub. Oh yeah, you and Bozeman, Colorado, Bozeman, Montana are the fastest growing tech hubs in the country, right? And that, so the technologies that benefit the world the most are what we're most interested in.
Great. And then the other half of the topic, so Sam, are there things we have to trade off when we make those investments? Are there, whether it's time or personal involvement or community support, like when we get behind something where we're having to make some choices, and so what are those trade-offs? What doesn't get attended to?
There's
always is that a false dichotomy?
I think there's always a trade-off. You're always choosing one thing over another thing, and some of the times you make the wrong decision, and sometimes they're equally great things to choose, right? And I think my fear is that choice immobilizes us. We don't do anything because we're afraid of making the wrong decision. And that is dangerous. So I think it's going with your gut, doing your best to make the right choice at the right time, and owning up to the mistakes you make. And I think if all of us sort of focus on what we're good at and what's moving the needle, then we're going to make the right call over time. And I think, that can be really hard in the moment. There's nothing worse than having to say no to an entrepreneur. That is, you could be a critical check in whether they do this or not. But again, when I look back at, selfishly, my 7 years in the ecosystem and I see what we've done as a community, I know we're on the right track.
Great. So, Jay, I'm going to ask you for perspective on an investment kind of topic, but it relates to investment of time or community involvement. So how do we ensure that the investments we're making to facilitate this level of innovation have kind of maximum enduring, regenerative, inclusive impact that also that these investments are also beneficial socially, environmentally, and for our community? Or is it even worth trying to thread that needle? Can you have that kind of positivity?
That question is at the heart of the entire 2 days of this conference, I think.
You have 30 seconds.
I have 30 seconds. So we've just used the word trade-off. I like to think of a trade with. There's deficit-based thinking, which is that, there's no thing there. I got to build it. I got to make something. And that's valuable sometimes. There are times when there is nothing there. You got to make it. Somebody has to do it. So I'll use artistic analogy because, go figure. So if I'm going to make a show, sure, I could write the script and I could make the costumes and build the sets and build the theater and invite people to come. Or there's probably an asset-based model, which I'd be like, you've got this thing, and you've got this thing, and you've got this thing. And if I could put it together in different combinations, I could come up with larger, additive, cumulative, community-building, more inclusive things. And we've got to think in an asset-based model. We just have to, because A, there's so many people in this room doing wonderful things, and we can combine them in different ways. And because we can't, I mean, the deficit model doesn't, we've tried that. That doesn't really work. And we've siloed ourselves, and we've built highways between us and other neighborhoods, and we've done all those things already. That's the whole car-based culture that Dominic just probably rightfully crucified in the previous, is that we've siloed ourselves. So I'm just saying, I don't know how to do all of that, but I just, rather than trade off, I'm just with, how are we working together? It's sort of a false choice. You ask everybody about the measurement of their work, and notice you didn't ask me, and I appreciate that, because I feel like that's like it's sort of a false question. Like, measurement is something we do in an economic system and in a capitalist system to understand its relative value or its score. Maybe it's a different way to think about it. And the arts don't work like that. We're not a problem to solve. We're a gift. Full stop. And so I just think, all right, how are you going to understand how all these things come together to make positive change? That's hard. How do people feel? Are you happy? Like, do you see your child forming a sense of themselves which you're proud of, and that they have self-confidence to grow into the world? That's the measurement. I don't know how you do that. So I don't know that I answered the question, but I just want to think about this asset-based economy, which we're all a part of, whether we mean to be or not, and lean into that.
Sure. Well, when the pie is getting bigger regeneratively, a lot fewer people are concerned about the size of their own slice of the pie.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that worried about the size of the pie. You asked about what are the challenges in Vermont. Maybe they're specific. You know, there's a lot of fear about that. We have a lot of fear, right? I want to grow up, and I want my children to grow up in the same place that I did. And so there's a lot of nostalgia based in that fear. I understand that. We're afraid of change. I said yesterday, change is a form of loss, and we have to grieve something when we lose it. And those grief rituals, that's the arts, right? That's how we're going to get to change, because we're going to understand that.
Yeah, great. So I want to get to some questions from the audience, but before I do, I want to hear from whichever of you wants to respond to this question, which is, what do you say to the people who quite often say, Vermont is not a friendly place to do business, or it's silly to try to start up a business in Vermont, or, there's no ability to raise money or external capital in Vermont. Its lack of density makes it impossible to get kind of a multiplier effect, so why not do these things elsewhere? How do you respond to that? Rob?
It's nonsense.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's a myth. It's a myth that's being disproven every day.
So Kyle came to us and said, I need $25 million. We put it together in 40 days, right, from 42 different investors. $27 million 9 months later, because he needed the money. In the end, from Vermont investors in roughly, don't quote me, but I think we're at about $120 million of direct Vermont capital in one company. And this has gone on and on and on with other companies. So one of the great joys of what I do is talk to all kinds and try to educate and help all kinds of Vermont investors, right? Hey, you can give back to the community. You can get a return on your investment, right? But it's a great way to allocate your wealth, right? And we have over now 120 investors in our network. We all have networks like this, every single one of us on this stage. We're going to an event tonight with 50 LPs in the Dudley Fund, right? So the ecosystem is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. If you need money, you need 20, 30, $100 million in Vermont without going to outside capital, we can do that. And then we're going to also help build superhighways to outside capital when we need that outside capital. So that's nonsense, yeah.
Great, love it. Anyone else? Sam?
Yeah, I mean, if it's an entrepreneur, that you're talking about, hypothetically, I want to talk to him. Because it might be part of that, talking to the right person at the right time. And it could be, sometimes it's tough love. Sometimes it's not a good idea. And it's not better or cheaper than another idea, or a variety of other reasons. So it could be that, or it could be that you just didn't have the right person to support you or the right resource at the right time. So I think, that's why it's so important for investors to give entrepreneurs very clear feedback of why no or why not now, and to be really respectful of that, because they're sharing their passion with you and something that they care really deeply about. And if you don't have the decency to tell them why or why not and quickly, then you really shouldn't be an investor.
Yeah, great. Okay, any closing thoughts from our panel, particularly Jay or John? If you had one more piece of advice to give to aspiring entrepreneurs and or UVM faculty and administration, now that you've got their attention, what do you want to tell them?
I would just say, I'd give you the same advice I give all the entrepreneurs I talk to, which is go ask your customers what they want and do that. So we need to all keep asking ourselves, what does this ecosystem need? What do our students need? What do our faculty need? What are our organizations working on arts or entrepreneurship or public policy need? And do that.
Find more ways to pay students to work for local companies.
I'd say two things. One, say yes to opportunities that come along. Say yes. If you're terrified of it, if you don't know how to give a speech to a bunch of university people, say yes to it. When I was 10 years old, I was fortunate enough to be taken to a taping of a Carol Burnett special. Right? I'll never forget it. She wore this long Mickey Mouse T-shirt, and halfway through she ripped it off and was wearing a red sequin dress, and I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, and she, as you know, Carol Burnett always takes questions from the audience. That's her shtick. She's really good at it. And she said, questions, and someone asked, and I was sitting next to the person who asked this, what do you recommend for a career in the arts? And my ears perked up as a 10-year-old. And Carol Burnett just said, you got to be in the room. You just got to be in the room where the work you believe in is being made, whatever that means, right? Sweep the stage, handle props, run the spotlight. This is the same with all these companies that we support. You want to learn about the industry you love, get in the room, say yes. That's my advice.
I love it. Say yes. So, audience, do you have any questions you want to ask to this brilliant panel here? How about right in front? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Janina Lovelace. I'm launching a startup that I'm dying to say a lot about, but I can't say too much about because of the patent filing that's going to be going through soon. However, I think someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Samantha, that entrepreneurs don't really know how to talk to investors, and I think because there may be a lot of stereotypes out there we need to diffuse, like from years of watching Shark Tank or or just the imagination that we have, that there's like 1,000 emails you get a day and you just hit delete, delete, delete. I think we need to diffuse that, but I'll just ask you the question directly, like what stands out to you, or like how do we talk to investors?
Such an amazing question. Be yourself, my God, because we will find out eventually, right? So don't communicate the way you think you're supposed to, right? When people come to us with authenticity, those are the people we want to talk to more, right? They pique our curiosity. We always say, like, ask for advice and you might get funding. Ask for funding, you'll get advice, right? So come authentically as you are. But I think another piece of just like practical advice is like, do your research and know who this investor is. Know the type of investments they make, who they are as people, what type of money they have. So like, do they have 50 LPs or do they have 2? Because that really makes a difference. Is it a family foundation? Why was the family foundation started? Like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs just have a massive list and they do kind of a spray and pray approach, And we can tell, right? Versus, hey, Sam, my name's John. I was at the UVM RISE conference, and I heard your panel, and I just loved what you said about X, Y, and Z. I'd love to pick your brain for 30 minutes about my company. Yes, I will respond anytime to that versus, we're raising $5 million and VCET needs to be in on this round. So that's my advice, and I'm happy to chat with you more about it.
Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate that.
Can I jump in real quick and just answer the be authentic, be yourself? That's a statement we all hear. I used to teach acting for a long time, and people say, well, how do you do that? Because that's it's clear, but it's hard to actionize. And I would advise young people, particularly young performers, don't create rules that aren't given. Figure out what rules you think you're filling that you think they want. Like, oh, this is what they expect, I should follow this rule. That rule wasn't given. But if there were rules given, follow them. It's really actionable. So I'll give you an example. If you're auditioning for a film and the director puts an X on the floor and says, stand there and deliver your lines, stand there, right? You were given that rule. But if they say, hey, come into the room, let's hear what you have to do, stand where you want. Stand where you feel yourself, where you feel you can be your most powerful. Try to check yourself. Where are you creating rules that aren't there for you as you talk to people from whom you want to have a meaningful conversation?
Okay. I wish we had more time for more questions, but I bet our panelists are going to stick around after this segment. I think we've got another topic before the break, so let's give a round of applause to 4 brilliant panelists who care deeply about our community. And find them afterwards for follow-up questions. Thanks so much, everybody.
That was a lot of fun. Thanks for your words.